Hi, I'm Tara Lipinski,
And this is Todd Kapistashi.
and you're listening to Unexpecting.
What episode? Could you guess?
No, we don't want to talk about this. I want this to be season 2. I've wanted
It is season 2.
No, guys, the last couple of episodes needed to be season 2, and you tell me every time, sure, I'm going to make it season 2, and then when it pops up in the
What
morning,
do you mean make it season 2?
it's just now, again, it's like episode 300 of season 1. This is season 2.
I don't know how to change it to season 2, but just for listeners to know, this is important for me in my brain, is episode 16 starts season 2,
So you just want people to magically
They'll just know.
this. No, they
1
won't.
to 15. 15 was when we brought Georgie on. That was the end of season 1.
I understand. No, can we?
That was our magnum fertility opus.
I know we're
1 to 15. And now we're doing it because we love the community and love just continuing to talk about this stuff. But 16 to now, which I think 25 or 26, that's season 2.
No, we have to Google this. I know we're mom and pop podcasters here, and it's not like we are experienced, but I'm sure there's a easy Google search that fixes this. Maybe
I wonder if I can
tomorrow.
retroactively go back and call something season 2.
I don't know, but I feel like if not, this is perfect timing because what we're talking about today feels very season 2.
Yeah. Well, also, the apt viewer may recognize.
Oh no, the comments, guys.
Yeah, we've laughed about how I really take the comments to heart.
But he loves them, and you've been giving him a lot of comments, and he will remark upon them.
Well, so this is okay. So again, speaking to the whole thing about season 1 and season 2, we tried really hard in the first 15 episodes. We were in the basement, we lit it. That's kind of part of what my job is lighting interviews and all that stuff. So I wanted it to look great. I wanted those first 15 episodes to just be.
You're underselling it. We had a full lighting setup downstairs. It was beautiful what you did.
And it looked nice. And then since then, because again, as we've joked and as I've joked, I have another job. So it's hard to be a full-time podcast cinematographer. So season 2, technically, episode 16 to now, look-wise, have been all over the place. We wanted to keep a video element, but it's been a little hit or miss. So my whole point of bringing that up is someone for the last couple of weeks, or various people on YouTube have been like, guys, can we put a light on? Tara's in complete darkness, or use a light maybe. We can't see anyone, and which kills me as someone who does my job, who's getting criticized on a podcast for not being able to see the subject. You usually
take all of these things. You're such a perfectionist. But guys,
so
we have lights.
We have lights. I bought on Amazon the cheapest possible lights you can get. I think they're for makeup influencers. But I've rigged them very high, and so there's lighting. It may not be great, but we can see your beautiful face now, and
thank you.
We're trying here. This isn't a point too to make is all these podcasts can look really, really nice, the big ones the Up in Smoke podcast that I listen to. It's a basketball podcast. Those guys, it's a professionally run thing where they all those dudes walk into a studio that's pre-lit and it looks really nice.
Yeah, no, you are running all things.
We're in our living room.
It's really funny, guys. Before we start, we're just okay, sound is on. The red lights are on the cameras. We're good.
I mean, a lot of people probably do podcasts like this, low budget kind of stuff we're doing. But yeah, it's not we're in a studio.
But I would never want it to be any other way. I love that you're in control of all of it.
Well, also what I tell Tara every single time we're going to do a podcast is hey, if we're going to do it in daylight, which this room is daylight, we have to do it at noon or 11 or 12 or 1. And now it's late in the day. And what's going to happen is even though we have lights, the shot is going to start to go darker.
Don't comment.
The sun is setting.
This. Do not comment.
Don't comment on the sun setting in this shot.
Yeah. Well, what's funny too about the comments is I feel like you really pressed for comments and then you got them. But I feel like
I didn't press for comments. Todd
always finds the one thing, and you were but do you notice there's none on Apple? So there's tons of comments on.
Well, yeah, no one has commented on Apple. That's where most people listen for a couple months.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments.
Start commenting. Comment on the lighting, how amazing it is.
Okay, so what are we talking about today?
Well, before we sort of really get into it, there's one other thing I wanted to bring up.
Oh boy.
That's kind of special to me.
Okay.
You went to nationals a few weeks ago.
I did.
We don't have to talk about anything skating wise, nationals wise, you wise. I only have one thing to talk about.
Gosh, I'm afraid.
It's that I signed my first autograph.
Oh, you did. You signed. It was so cute.
Well, first of all, before you tell your perspective, I'm pretty sure, I think you're going to disagree with me. I'm pretty sure there's 2 reasons why that person asked me for my autograph.
There are a few.
I think there's 3 reasons. I think one could be they genuinely thought I was Johnny Weir. I mean,
that's the most ludicrous thing.
Like maybe they're not a huge skating fan, and they were like, "Oh, that must be her partner."
No,
he's on TV too.
No, definitely not.
So maybe not that. They thought I might be Terry Gannon, which is a huge insult to Terry Gannon because he's a much handsomer man than I am. But that's 2. 3 is that the mom who was like, oh, like, you know, Tara's over there if you want to ask for her autograph. A mom might have said, like, I think that might be your husband, so he doesn't feel weird. Ask for his autograph too.
But I don't think
those are the 3
say,
scenarios.
you know, oh, he doesn't want to feel weird. I don't know. I think they knew you maybe from like my Instagram or maybe the podcast. But then
a couple more people.
Yeah,
I think they were like, well, who is this guy? Is this like an old skater too? Is this a Olympic gold medalist?
You just called me old.
Maybe they thought I was Brian Boitano.
I have no idea, but it was hilarious watching you sign autographs, like our names together. I just thought it was very cute. But one last thing, I don't want to get too deep into this because we have so much to talk about. But guys, nationals was very interesting for me. We brought Georgie, so it was the first flight. We don't want to, you know, talk too much about just, you know, nationals itself, but I personally have not been that sick in 10 years. It was...
Well, we're still trying to figure out if it was food poisoning or like a stomach bug. You kind of don't know.
I have no idea. Todd walked into the room because he flew after me, and I was already in the midst of like this horrible sickness. And I can tell you, I've done long hours at the Olympics. I've done IVF through, you know, commentary at the Olympics. Nothing compared to this. This is probably my proudest moment that I didn't throw up on live television, and I got through 2 days of 12-hour days somehow with either the worst food poisoning or the worst stomach bug. I didn't eat for 48 hours. Too much information, but they put a bucket under the booth. Like, it was awful.
Well, I don't want to ruin a potential sponsor, but we think the culprit could possibly have been like Hours Old Cheesecake Factory that had been sitting there that you ate.
Yeah, I think it was a stomach flu. It just was like, all week I felt awful.
But no one else got it. I don't know. I didn't get it.
You didn't. But
there was like legitimate hair holding back in the toilet moments.
I know there was.
But it is really pretty incredible. Like, again, we talked about this in a previous episode about more so with IVF, but you never know what people are going through. Like, people see you on TV and Johnny, and it's all laughs and fashion and whatever. But little did they know you were doing all these shots. But like in this case, it was similar, but just not IVF. It was just illness, like a bucket under your feet when you're on TV.
This was literally the worst. I mean, I was running to and from the booth, going to the arena bathroom, praying that I was going to be able to like stop puking and come back. It was awful. So on that note,
also quick note, Georgie made her TV debut.
She did.
We threw her on.
We did. We threw her on, and she pouted because it was past her bedtime, but it was cute.
Yeah, it was really cute. So, you know, I think this is going to be a good episode to kind of really get back into the nitty gritty of fertility, I think, because we're starting the second journey, I guess, a soft launch, I'd say. Because we're not exactly, you know, I think you have more hard deadlines than I do of like when we want a surrogate to get pregnant or when baby number 2 we potentially want, you know, delivered, I guess. But I think you've started the surrogacy process again, you know, knowing now that Michaela isn't available to be a surrogate, which was, I know, a tough thing for you to grapple with, but you've started reaching out to the agencies and getting bios and that whole thing. So, you know, we did talk about this in a previous episode early
Yeah,
I
but I
think.
can go into more
yeah,
detail.
go into sort of our process this time and what it's been like.
Yes, but before I do that, just one quick note on Michaela that you brought her up. I was really interested to see where our relationship or how our relationship would evolve through this news. And, we've both talked about in the beginning, it was almost shock and so unexpected, and that we just felt like, oh, like maybe we could get around this, or maybe there's still hope. And then now it's really sunk in. And we were talking the other night and we're like, now it's just like a little sad.
You realize you used the word unexpecting, right?
I did.
Which isn't a word.
I know. But I think because
we made it a word. In our universe here.
It's a word.
It's a word, yeah.
But I don't know. It's just been interesting to see how our relationship has evolved. And I actually feel that we're closer, stronger. Just it's a crazy feeling. I don't know how to explain it or articulate it, but I feel closer to her now than even in the journey itself. And I don't know if we're just, time makes the heart grow fonder.
Well,
but
you guys just went through something and now it's kind of the aftermath of it.
I
think,
but
right?
I just feel like we're like that mafia love, and where it's like we get off and like, I love you, I'm here for you, whatever you need. It's just like such a nice support system to have, and to be able to bounce, what I'm going through, on the second journey off of her is it's been really nice. But yeah, we've been having phone calls and you've been on some. Sometimes I take them first, or I kind of go through the profiles and I do the digging and the the deciding a little bit, and then I bring you in as backup.
Second opinion.
Second opinion.
Well, what did you learn the first time around finding Michaela that you've kind of used this time? It's probably a lot easier to weed things out, right? Because not weed things out, but weed people out who maybe don't fit.
Perfectly for them and
you
for
also
us.
know that Dr. Beck is going to kind of nix people for certain reasons too. So
so that's a thing, and I love it, to be honest. But Dr. Beck, I think, has the reputation that she is really hard on passing.
Hates surrogates. Just really hard on surrogates.
No, she is hard on the medical records. So when you have the profile and you're like, oh, this seems like a possible good match. Maybe you have a call and you're like, even better. Then you send over the medical records and they have to be approved by your doctor. And Dr. Beck has very high standards of, and for good reason, because she wants to give her patients and the surrogate the best shot at success. And I love that. I love that. I feel like we are checking off even more boxes, but it is hard because I always think if we match with someone, will we pass the test when it's time?
It's got to be hard for them too. And we've already had, you can talk about it, but we've had conversations with people who were kind of like, felt like they were going to be a great surrogate or our surrogate. And then something came up, that like it wasn't to be. And it must be just hard for them to have these conversations with us, get to know us a little bit. We're kind of grilling them on their life a little bit, and then it's like it doesn't work out, and that's probably hard.
Right,
on their
but
end.
I feel like it's got to be hard. But I feel like they're also, using this as the like the FaceTime as an opportunity of sort of interviewing us in a way. They ask questions of, their own, so they know that they want to do this or that this is a good match for them, or the reason that they're going through it. Are they getting what they think they're going to get out of it? Whether it's a relationship or how they want that relationship to look. But, your question of what I learned. I've learned a lot, because I think up until the point where I knew the most was where I would have my miscarriages. So I knew pregnancy up until that point, and then I really knew nothing about it afterwards. And I think I really didn't want to get on the internet and do research and all of the stuff that I had done in my own journey, because I just thought it was going to bring me more anxiety, which I'm glad I didn't. But you kind of go into it naive, I think, probably like most people that don't run into issues. But pregnancy, a lot can happen. And there's a lot of things I didn't know about placenta previa, or, if the surrogate's blood pressure is too high, or when they deliver.
Yeah, and that's the main thing for me is like the premature birth thing. I don't think either of us thought that hard about
it. I didn't even think about it.
What happens if it's 36 weeks and there's so many complications when you deliver a baby early. So when it comes to surrogates who tend to deliver like later in the term,
or that they just like Michaela kept like it was 39 weeks induction because nothing was changing, and that was sort of her track record of all of her surrogacies.
So I guess you're saying then that you have more of an eye on that. Like
I have
when
more of
they're
an
delivering.
eye on when I look at the profiles. For me, it always, of course, you want, a great connection and communication and relationship and someone that you feel is exactly, your type of person. But for me, and I don't know about you, it really comes down to giving us the best shot of a pregnancy being successful. And, we lost 6 embryos and we have 7 on ice. And I think there's still this fear in my mind of, anything can happen, but there are statistics. It's even if you're a surrogate, it doesn't matter. There's a 65% chance that it will work. And then there's a 35% chance that it...
Quick math.
Sorry.
Quick math there.
40.
No, you're right. You got it.
What? 40?
65 and 35.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, but we usually talk about this because I always say 40. I thought you were going to say that because
No, I
I'm always
said
like,
quick
there's
math.
a 40% chance that it doesn't work. But surrogates just don't always get pregnant. And that is just the name of the game. Anyone who puts an embryo in, that's you're gambling. And which side are you going to end up on? And I think for me, it was really important. The first journey, as you know, we were really desperate for it to work because if it didn't, it would have been hard to say like, oh, we just ended up in the 35%. Like we would have thought something else was wrong. We wouldn't know what protocol to take next. We wouldn't know what to do next. And Michaela had 3 surrogacy, two kids of her own, 3 surrogacies. They all worked the first time. And for me, that was just relief, right? That it was like, there's a magnet somewhere in that uterus and that's how it works because she's defying all the statistics and odds. But what's funny is like when we decided to go with her, I remember thinking like, oh, Tara, yeah, you love that. But what are the chances now that a 4th one in a row is going to work? Like you're gambling and you're going to like, there's no way. And it did. So there is something I think about some people's uteruses that have these magnets. So when I'm looking at the profiles, it's really important that that you have had a surrogacy journey before in IVF, your body has, adapted to the medicine and that it worked the first time. And it's interesting. I've sort of become a little more relaxed this journey, rightfully so, I think. Just, being able to have gone through a successful one, it just takes that pressure off. And I think I'm going to compromise a little bit more on some of these, boxes that I needed
Like which
check.
ones?
Like that. At first I thought I wanted someone who had at least 2 IVF surrogacies that worked the first time. Now I think I could go with someone who had just 1 that worked the first time. I could, like, I feel like there's some things that I could just be a little less worried about this time. I think it's a lot like dating, right? Because it's just like, you have to compromise on some things, but then you have your non-negotiable, items that this is what you need. And it's just finding who fits that match. But it's crazy because you're looking at, like, when I look at these profiles, they're amazing, right? Like you can barely find anything wrong. Like to be a surrogate is insane, right? Like you can't really have that many things that medically go wrong.
Well, you know what we should do as just a funny behind the scenes.
Yes.
I should film it. Is like you walk into a surrogacy agency and like fill out an application.
And be like,
they're like, how many births have you had? 0.
0.
How many miscarriages?
4. How many failed trans? 6.
Just be like, I really want to do it. I feel like this is my calling.
Like, are you going to squash that dream for me?
And then sue them when they discriminate.
No, but that's my point. Like, I think about that when I'm looking at these things and like, Dr. Beck finds something small wrong. I'm like, God, Dr. Beck, do you remember me though? Like,
yeah,
we were at the low end there. Like this,
you can do a lot of things in life. Surrogacy is just not going to be
that's
one
not
of your
going to be
things.
where I thrive.
Well, the other thing about having not too much, but more knowledge this time than you did the last time is you just come into it, even with the agencies, with like a baseline of knowledge, and you kind of know probably a lot more than they think you know.
Yeah.
Even to the point where you came home one day and I feel like you were disgruntled because someone was like mansplaining something to you.
I had a little mansplaining happen, but
email.
okay. But I'll caveat with this: it's probably these agencies have to give you information as an intended parent to really understand the process. Maybe it's their first time. Maybe they didn't go through IVF. You never know what it is. So just because I know all of these things and have been through so much, obviously these agencies don't know. But I had met with a surrogate, and I didn't know that she had done one surrogacy and it failed the first time. And I really, really liked her. And that's the hardest part. When you really connect, everything feels good. And you're just like, oh, this, like, it just feels right. And then to sort of grapple with these other anxieties. And I have to think about her and myself, because the most important thing is not just to jump in and be like, let's do it and see what happens. A, because we know how valuable these embryos are. But B, you want both parties to be super comfortable throughout this. I don't want my anxiety being so over the top because I'm worried about a transfer failing. So you want to be able to be honest with the people that are representing these surrogates. So, I did just say like, oh my God, I love her so much. I'm a little, worried about, that one box that I really wanted checked off. And I got like an email back of explaining the 65%. And then it was also like, and just so you know, like it could take up to 3 failed transfers for it to work. And it's like, of course, yes, like I know all of these things, but we really got to stay out of the zone that we fail 3 times on these embryos.
Well, it's hard. Well, that just made me think it is hard. I feel so bad for these surrogates, because there are probably surrogates who don't have a failed transfer the first time, and then maybe they have like 6 successful ones in a row. 100%. But you're kind of like nixing her because she had a failed, it's just like very difficult.
Mine is an imaginary like stress relief thing where it's not logical. That's what I said. Like even with Michaela, like it's not logical that this is going to work a 4th time, but it's just this thing where I want to have that in my mind as like security, but I know that means nothing. And I've had so many friends that have had their surrogate fail the first time, the second time, perfect pregnancy, everything. So again, anyone listening and wanting to go down, a surrogacy journey, don't take my advice. This is just me and my trauma talking. So I make up these rules.
And now a quick word from our sponsors.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And speaking about that, I wanted to talk about my personal experience with therapy. I love it. I mean, I really love therapy. I get to work on myself and also get to hopefully be the best version of myself in the way that I show up in the relationships in my life. And it's interesting. I think there's this common misconception out there that relationships in your life have to be easy to be right. But guys, we all need to work on things. And I just love the idea that I get to learn more about myself, constantly evolve. And I guess for me, therapy just gives me a place to find the best ways to learn how to communicate my needs while also trying, keyword trying, because we cannot be perfect, but to show up as the best version of myself in these relationships. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, which makes it extremely convenient for our busy schedules. The flexibility is great. You just have to fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit betterhelp.com/unexpecting today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/unexpecting. Okay, time to talk Ritual. I am personally trying another one of their vitamins right now, which is focusing on my gut health. And if anyone's interested in what I'm taking, it's the Symbiotic Plus Gut Health. And so far, I'm loving it. But as you have heard me talk about throughout this podcast, I took Essential for Women Prenatal during my IVF and pregnancy journeys. So I've loved my experience with that prenatal with Ritual. So did you know it's important to take a prenatal before you're pregnant? The first 28 days of pregnancy are an important time in a baby's neural development, so preparation is key. Also, I loved that the routine of taking my prenatal was an easy one. Their capsules featured a delayed release design to make it gentle on an empty stomach and a citrus essence to make taking your multis actually enjoyable. But what was even more important to me was that I felt comforted by the fact that the Essential for Women Prenatal is rigorously tested and validated by a third party for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. Ritual works with world-class certification bodies to validate their products. One less thing for us to worry about during such an important time in everyone's life. So why settle for a multivitamin you're not 100% sure about? Ritual was literally built on trust, so you know it's the real deal. Get 20% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/Tara. Start Ritual or add Essential for Women Prenatal to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/Tara for 20% off.
What is your, because I think I have my answer is like, what are the 2 or 3 top things like in order of what you look for?
Yes.
And I guess for me, it would be what you're describing, like just good bio in terms of, successful transfer, successful pregnancy and all that. And the second thing, honestly, I think is, and Michaela was so good at this. I mean, if you've been listening, the only thing that happened during Michaela's pregnancy was this tiny bit of like spotting. And she immediately, this was late at night, called us in the middle of the night, said she was like going to the emergency room. She kind of took very quick action over something she probably didn't even need to. So I think that's number 2 for me, because you just don't want, and I don't want to blow up anyone's spot, but you've been talking to some surrogates, and one of them, I think, or maybe even 2, kind of, there were some red flags with like, well, in my one surrogacy, I didn't really, feel the baby kick for a while, but
I knew I had an appointment next week, and I was like,
and that's maybe fine, but like, that's, I think for someone who's
like a personality match is what I think I'm looking for too, as one of my bullet points of, you just kind of get each other. You kind of pick up that, oh, this person's a little.
Is there a box that says like psychopath? Check.
Thank you. I was going to say type A, really just takes the.
Nervous Nelly checkbox.
Yeah, nervous Nelly. But that gave us such relief. I mean, I remember that night with Michaela. It was like she was on it. It was just a little spotting and she was there, and the heart rate monitor was hooked up and she was asking questions. And that's something that
I would just love to see these conversations. Because, some of these are happening without me. You kind of screen people before I get brought in, but I would love to have a camera on you when the person on the other end's like, yeah, I mean, the baby, I just didn't feel it kicking for a couple months. And I just thought it was probably fine. I had some like bad ice cream one night and I didn't feel it kick anymore.
No. I mean, it's been interesting. Most of the people, there's been a few that I thought, this is it. This is a match. This is gonna happen. And it doesn't happen for, reasons that you can't even imagine when you start. Because, I mean, here, I'll give an example. I really loved this one surrogate.
Here.
What?
Here, let me give you an example.
Yeah. Well, it's
like
hard because I don't want to
that.
give out, I don't want to, like you said, like.
Here. You are giving them out. You're giving out examples like Halloween candy.
Okay.
Here. I don't know why that tickled me a little bit. Go ahead. Here, I'll give you an example.
So there's a surrogate in California, and profile was just amazing. I couldn't remember, maybe 2 or 3 worked the first time. You asked what my
psychopath box checked.
You ask what my things are. It's, I think, from all the miscarriages I had, for scar tissue, for any other reasons, just stay away from that. And then the transfer working the first time. And then what we learned in the first pregnancy, we really didn't get into that. But, you look at, I never thought to look. Why are you laughing?
I'm just still thinking about the here thing. It's so dumb, but.
Guys, this is how life goes here.
Formal. I have the giggles now.
You got the giggles. But to your point of not maybe thinking about the end of the pregnancy, and I didn't ever think about that. I thought if someone was like 30 weeks pregnant and we were like, well, it's been successful and has a heartbeat, like it's doesn't matter. Like the baby will just pop out healthy. And it's like, yes, you can have premature deliveries or births or things like that. But I think just to avoid, the stress that comes along with maybe the baby going to the NICU or, we should bring someone on at some point, because I follow a few of those accounts of parents that either have gone through IVF and then also go through being NICU parents for, weeks or months of the baby's life. It is really traumatizing to go through that as well and not have that ordinary experience of bringing your child home. So to your point earlier, there were so many things I just didn't know that could go wrong in pregnancy or, could happen. And so now I always look on the profile of when you know, how many pounds was the baby? When did the birth happen? Was it full term? So those are those things. And then like you said, the second thing is just finding that person. And this back to the surrogate in California. Did you not feel we were kind of the same person? Like she was just so particular about.
She also reminded me of Michaela a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Just very
kind of same attitude.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Just like cool, chill, so particular about things. Like everything had order. It just like felt like she was very on top of it, very open to just like wanting all of us to have this relationship, all of us to feel comfortable and healthiest pregnancy possible. And it really there was nothing wrong, like nothing, except you go on these calls and you don't know what to ask, but you just keep asking a million questions and something pops up, and it could be anything. And this time it was like where her spouse worked. And it just was one of these things where I was a little concerned about being around chemicals or fumes or whatever it was. And it could be so random like that. Right. And maybe it's not, it's for me in my head, I'm like, you have to make all these decisions. Like, do you just put that aside? Do you not? What do you do? And it's just so hard because you start to immediately like this person, envision what the pregnancy would look like or the journey would look like. And there's just something that can pop up. And then it's like, oh, maybe this isn't, maybe I'm going to be a nervous wreck worrying about it. And that's not worth it. So it's been hard, and it would have been nice because she was in California, because there's other things I think I've learned.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Michaela obviously wasn't in California. She was in Idaho.
Right.
Which I guess was
I liked it.
Fine.
I'm
right?
fine. So that's another thing.
Well, that's the question is, would you this time around, I think there are some nice things if they were in California or close. Like that surrogate was in Palm Springs, which is drivable. So, I don't know how important it is though.
Yeah, for me, it really isn't. And the first round, it definitely wasn't. We were just so focused on, will this baby have a heartbeat? Like that's the like level we were starting at. That I think for me, it was, again, nice to be able to be on FaceTime for these appointments, but then have her come in for she came to LA for the 20-week scan with our OB and doctor. And then lucky enough how it all worked out, she gave birth in LA, which again, we didn't realize it till we went through it. It was so nice. It was so nice. She gave birth with my OB. So I had that comfort. You have the experience of just the doctors you've worked with for years, a hospital, you bring the baby home. So now that's in the back of my mind. But maybe that's something we compromise on. Like I have my like levels of where to compromise or not. But I'm definitely open to either, remote and then delivery here, or, remote or, again, ideal would be someone in California, but it's really hard. It really is. It's like trying to find the perfect spouse. And it's just like you have.
And you failed at that. So you don't have a good track record with.
Very funny. No, but it's just like compromising on certain things. But yeah, we've had these calls, and I don't know. It's really hard because then all of a sudden it's like you don't get any profiles and you don't hear from anyone, and you're like, oh, this feels like a drought of like, maybe no one's out there. And I don't know, maybe it's just going to pop up one day and it's going to be right. But it's hard because it's like, you think about it still. Like I keep thinking about a few of the surrogates and I'm like, like, was that it? Should I have done that one? So I don't know. That one in Palm Springs really hurt my heart.
And they get, they'll move on to someone else and maybe she's pregnant.
Like literally, like she could be pregnant right now because that's how in demand surrogates are. And sometimes that's another thing like to keep in mind. In the first round, I didn't know that. But when they say on the email, like this surrogate could be gone by tomorrow, sometimes they'll like write that. It's the truth.
Well, it's also like you don't know people's red flags or deal breakers on these things. The person in Palm Springs may have got snatched up because that person just didn't care about the thing that you cared about.
Of course. And it's probably like great and fine and whatever. It's just, you have to balance how you're going to feel. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice I could give is like, think quickly before you just jump in of how you will feel. Cause it's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of unknowns. And you want to be, I think I was for being a psychopath, wasn't I pretty relaxed? I mean, be honest. If you think of that our first journey.
During
Like,
Michaela's pregnancy?
Would you have ever thought that would have been me? Like, I know you. You were probably like, oh my God, this is going to be insane.
Yeah, I think part of it was probably ignorance. Part of it was also just the joy of being pregnant. I mean, I think you were, both of us were kind of wrecks before the heartbeat scan. And even 20 weeks, I think you were nervous before that. I think after 20 weeks, though, it kind of was like smooth sailing pretty much.
We really
by the way, I'm having a hard time concentrating as I see the sun going down and the room getting darker. It also, very random aside, since I see the lighting change in the room on your face, I have a we've never talked about this. I have a very, very, very personally, I think, specific side of my face.
No, you don't.
Do you have one?
Wait, you have a side?
Yeah.
What is it, 8 years? You have never told me this.
Well, guess. What side do you think is better? Seriously. Also, terrible audio if you're just listening, but Tara's looking at my face.
Todd, there is no difference.
This side.
What?
Look it. I think
your left side is your good
if
side.
If I'm being generous to myself, I would rate myself looks-wise like a 6.4 on this side.
On that side.
On this side, I'm like a 2.
Oh, are you kidding me?
This side is so much worse.
Why?
I'm hideous on this side.
Oh my God, you're
I don't know what it is why people have that. Because if you say you have a side, I wouldn't be. Well, turn.
Have you ever noticed in photos which way
No. Well, but this should just show how much I love you because I'm sacrificing my good side for you so you have the good light
Todd,
coming in through the window.
No, I'm sacrificing my good side to just be a chill.
Oh, your left side is your good side.
No, my right side.
Right.
That's my right.
But your left side showing here. So we're on the wrong side.
Yeah, I should be this side, but I always wear my hair
we have complementary good
this way.
sides. This is perfect. You could be on the good side.
I should be on this side. My hair goes to that side.
Next week, we're going to switch.
We'll switch. This is really off topic, but do you ever hear when they're like, look at a picture, that's really what you look like? Like what you look like in the mirror is what your mind has like taken in of what you look like, but people don't see you like that.
First of all, a mirror is like the reverse of what is reality.
Right.
Because you know what a mirror is doing,
I know, but when you're, but when you're, of course, but when you're
putting some like...
No, but what you look like in the mirror.
Deep philosophical meaning into like...
No, but Todd, when you look
physical thing, a mirror is just reflecting your image.
I think when both of us are staring, looking at the mirror together, like what I'm seeing myself as is different than what you are looking in the mirror looking at me as.
I wish I could recite this, but we both love Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Did we? Yeah, we watched it together. You probably fell asleep. We're going down a deep tangent upon tangent. But just to update people, we talked. You would think that things we talk about on the podcast, like you would then in our normal life, like try to combat doing them again. But the movie thing has happened again. We were watching Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh no,
another sort of Academy Award nominee. I think
like a narcoleptic.
No, but listen, this is funny actually. Tara, at some point I look over fairly early on, I don't know, maybe halfway through, and she's dead out. Then she kind of wakes up for the last like 10 minutes and it finishes. I'm like, oh, would you, like jokingly, but not. And you were like, nah, I don't know. It's kind of slow. I'm like, oh my God, it's kind of slow. You slept through so much of it. Then I didn't realize how much you had slept through because the next day I was like, just go back and watch this movie. It was really good. Like, I don't know why you're saying you didn't like it. You didn't see any of it. So I go back. I'm like, where'd you leave off? Did you see this? Did you see this? She's like, no. And we kept going back and back and back. And basically you're like, oh, I think I saw this. And it was like 15 minutes into the movie. You had missed an hour and a half.
And then I watched it and guys, it was so good. I loved it.
Yeah, because you saw it.
I love how my go-to answer is always like, oh, it's a little slow.
It went from a confusing short film to like a real movie because you actually saw it.
It was so good.
It just cracks me up that legitimately I said, what'd you think? And you looked me dead in the eyes and said, I don't know. It was kind of slow.
I don't know.
But anyway, back to your face.
Never mind. Moving on.
No, but what were we saying about our faces?
I was just saying if we were both standing looking at each other in the mirror together.
Oh, but I was about to say something about Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, okay. What?
Because there's a line in the first episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm this season where Larry says something to Leon about what a mirror is, and similar to the ramblings that you just went on about what a mirror is. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I really feel like I'm a female version of Larry sometimes.
You have some similarities, oddly.
I love him so much.
We saw him one time at a restaurant.
I know.
And I wanted so badly to go up to him.
Wouldn't it be great to have Larry David on the podcast?
Talking about what? He would be great to talk about like sperm count and like all the male factor things.
Yeah. What if we just like made it fertility based? But
I wonder, I don't even know if he has kids.
I don't know either.
I think he was married and divorced because that's like the show. He's married and divorced. So I think that's maybe based in some truth.
I have no idea. But hey, Larry David, if you're listening to Unexpecting the podcast.
What I wanted to ask you next, though, is, and I have kind of strong feelings on this, I guess, but curious your thoughts, is we're in a weird place because we went through this journey, especially for you, insanely traumatizing, 5 years. We kind of get through it. We have Georgie. It's amazing. And then there is this sort of thing of like, okay, we want another kid and we're so blessed to have these embryos, to be able to afford a surrogate, all those things. But just the idea of like kind of starting again where there could be an issue, and probably not, because it feels in a certain sense that we figured a lot of it out. But even like when you bring up certain terminology, like even, I hate to say this, Dr. Beck, I love you, but when I hear the word Dr. Beck or like a point like California Fertility Partners or surrogacy any of the fertility terminology, when I hear you say them again, it felt like we had this break from it. And now you're starting to like say the words again.
Yeah, I'm saying the words.
And it like makes me want to throw up.
I know. But I mean, I think that is right. I think that's PTSD. And I think that I have the same feeling. Like, you know, I'm focused on the surrogacy part of it, but
like you said the word protocol the other day about Dr. Beck and the protocol for the surrogate.
Like we would do an ERA first, which is like a mock cycle, and then like I
wanted to put my head on the table.
Wait, should we tell people about the head on the table?
We're telling way too many side stories, but yes, go quickly.
Okay, quickly. So we're at lunch one day.
No. So
what?
I should never put you in charge of a story.
Why?
One of the things that makes it really funny is that it was at like a super, and we rarely go to this restaurant, and it's way overpriced. It's good, but not that good.
Don't give it away. You like to call things out.
It's a really expensive restaurant in LA. So it's like a high end,
Italian
restaurant.
Yes.
And we're there, I guess probably early because that's the only time we can get a reservation at a nice restaurant. And there's like a family of like 5 or 6. It feels like a mom and a dad, 2 kids, and like a grandma. I don't know. It felt like it was like a 7 or 8 person table. And then all this, we're kind of like talking, but then they're being loud, and you can tell that the dad is like yelling at the kids or something. They're being bad. And the dad all of a sudden goes, "Hey, stop that. Head on the table." And Tara's looking, I think my back is to the whole thing, and you're looking at them with your eyes like wide open, being like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this." The dad yelled, head on the table. And the kids were forced to both put their foreheads on the table. So they're like heads down.
Face head down on at this nice table.
So I feel like I subtly was like, I got to see this. And I turn around, and it's just the family having normal conversation. And the 2 kids at a nice restaurant, their heads are just flat on the table.
Forehead down, just like, it was so interesting. So Todd and I have brought this.
Well, so we have a joke now. If we're mad at the other person, we'll just say head on the table. Head on the table.
Head on the table. Oh my goodness. Wait, where were we going from here? Just the thought of starting again, or you're not going to like me even giving these words, but just like, can you imagine having to do a transfer and a 2-week wait and a pregnancy test?
Just even well, I guess we don't have to see the pregnancy test though. Well, we have to see them, but they're not like physically in the house.
Right.
No,
I just see them on
But
text.
even that, or like, this is what actually makes me nauseous, is you showing me a picture of a line that I need to tell you which one, if it's darker
or
than
not
another one.
I know.
But I mean, we're being down in the dumps, but like, I don't know, we have reason to be positive, Michaela.
Well, that's the
you
thing.
know.
I think I have like, like we were at zero hope. I was like at the end of the line. Now we have hope. We've done it once. We've done it
Yeah.
once. It's possible. And to me, that is all I ever wanted, truthfully, was just that it could happen once. Obviously, I think there's something to the PTSD of it all, that it has nothing to do with anything, but it makes you feel, I mean, I don't know about you, it just makes you feel that nauseous feeling thinking about it.
It's almost, for me, I guess, less of, oh no, like maybe something could go wrong again and we lose all 7 embryos. We only have one child. But like, it's not even that. I think it's just the raw like reminder of what we went through.
Or just like what your
some of
days are
those
like.
things.
And yeah, it just brings back, it's like to be honest, like, again, love Dr. Beck, but like when I go into that room, it brings back a lot.
Yeah. But the reality, though, that's great, is that, again, we sort of know a lot of our issues that we had. Michaela, the embryo works, or embryos are good. There's no like genetic issue with, a surrogate who carried. So I don't know, with 7 embryos, it's kind of hard.
No,
Knock on wood,
it's not kind of hard. We are the outliers.
No, but I think we after 5 years, we got lucky in the sense that we have a child and it worked, you know? So
but I just
there's
wonder,
no reason, there's literally no real reason to think that.
No, see, I don't even don't talk about
Besides
it.
the 65% issue.
No, this is why it is hard to talk about these things in real time. Like, I'm superstitious, and I disagree with you. I think anything can happen because it happened to us once, where it just was like you thought that can't happen, and life was like, oh, but it can. So I am on my toes. So that's why yeah.
Well, this is probably a question for another podcast or another day. I know how you're going to answer, but I mean, how devastating would it be to not, again, it feels like such a privileged thing to be like, oh, well, how upset would you be if you couldn't have another kid? Like, we've already gone through this trauma and we were so lucky to get out on the other side of it with Georgie. But, how upset would you be if it was just you, me, and Georgie?
Like this is such a delicate subject, especially in the community, just because, yes, I feel really content and happy, and there is so much relief and so many feelings that I have Georgie, right? But when I was going through the first journey, obviously I didn't have the perspective or understanding or experience to even think about what it would be like to have secondary infertility or not being able to have a second child. And there were so many people that are in the same journey that we were in, the length of it, 5 years trying to get a second kid. And I think they struggle so much with, just sort of like people, they would say it to me in messages of like, oh, it's so hard to talk about though, because like, it's like, oh, well, you already have a kid. But that doesn't take away from A, the loss you might be going through, the B, that you just want a bigger family. You want to be able to have a second child. And I think all of those emotions are valid. So I don't know where I stand on that exactly. I just know that I really do want us to have a second child. I will always just be so grateful that we have Georgie, but it will be, hard to say that I wouldn't be devastated if we couldn't, or maybe I'd be like, okay, I don't know.
I mean, like I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. Like on a fundamental level too, it feels like frustrating that if we only have one child, like we figured we went through 5 years of figuring everything out.
All these embryos.
Not just, I mean, again, the greatest miracle in the world, having Georgie, but just to like not have 7 kids. Like technically what we went through, we should have all 7 embryos that we have.
Well, that is why I have the urge.
My point.
That's exactly. And that's why I feel like I have the urge all of a sudden to have this huge family, because blood, sweat, and tears along with all of our genetics in those embryos. So you kind of want it. But yeah, I think that there's so many people going through secondary or even third, when they go for their third child, and it's hard for anyone to say, well, sorry, you already have a kid. But I do think there's a gratefulness there for sure.
Yeah. So is there anything else on our sort of soft launch that you want to talk about surrogacy wise?
No, I think that this is a good start of the first couple steps, and just, getting your feet wet a little bit and seeing what's going to happen. And we'll keep you all posted as we go along and have more information. And I'm sure there'll be interesting stories along the way.
Feel free to comment about the lighting in the in the comments, and we'll only get better from here. You know?
Now we have, we now have these two lights.
The start of the podcast, it was nice and bright in here. Now I can just see the behind you is dark and you're spotted, but you're lit. You can see your face.
You can see my face.
We're making progress in season 3.
We'll get there.
All right.
This was fun.
See you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening to Unexpecting the podcast. Please subscribe, leave a review, and follow Unexpecting Pod on Instagram for info about upcoming weekly episode releases.